Hello and welcome to another Radix Roundtable. I have Russell Harvey, CTO of RDXWorks, Matthew Hine, CPO of RDXWorks, Adam Simmons, CSO of RDXWorks, and myself, Piers Ridyard, CEO of RDXWorks. And we have our January Roundtable where we've got some great questions from the community, and we're going to be going through some of those topics. But to start off with, I think everyone has seen recently, if you've been hanging out on Twitter, if you've been hanging out on social media, that there has been another hack happened. This time, a gentleman called Kevin Rose got $1.4 million of NFTs stolen as a result of him signing doing something called blind signing, a transaction that ended up with someone even using a hardware wallet getting most of their net worth stolen immediately from them. And this has caused a bit of a furore on social media with people really starting to hone in on the UX problem inherent to crypto. So, Adam, what's been your take on this?
So it's been really interesting, the response from people. The first one is a lot of hardcore people in the crypto space are tackling this from what are the best practices to avoid this as a user, to make sure this doesn't happen to you, like use burner wallets, use intermediary wallets, and all of these other steps. And yes, that could have helped prevent it, but it feels, as many other people have commented, that is a really odd way of solving this problem. And then what's been amazing is seeing the Radix community, for example, being like, hey, there's this thing called the Radix wallet with a transaction manifest. That would really fix problems like this. And that's got some good traction. And I think this is just really good to see that, well, not good to see that this is happening, but good to see that the things that we're working on solving are real world cases that happen even to experienced and sophisticated users every single day.
Yeah, I think
it wasn't like this was some weird edge case where like there was this complex multi-part hack where it's like, okay, what we do is just best practices to block these edge cases of really sophisticated attacks. I mean, like, you know, it sucks for the guy, but ultimately what he did is he signed a transaction that said, take my money. Like, it was just that simple. He just got fooled. Like, so this is a very simple thing. Why was that even possible? Like, this is basic
and to be clear, it's like, this is a smart, capable guy who's in this space and everything like that. The fact that you can fool someone like that means that you're going to be easily able to fool my non-technical friend who's just, dabbling with crypto, and it's just not going to work for the mainstream.
Yeah, I think the thing that's been really interesting has been the shift in people's opinion on, like, people are like, stop saying it's the user's fault. It's not the user's fault. Like, this is not acceptable. Like, and all of the ways that people are proposing to solve it are just so not sufficient. Like, there's like I've seen a couple of like add-ons that you can get to your wallet, but it doesn't tell you anything more about what's happening. It will just scan to make sure that the address that you think you're signing is actually connected to is something that is recognized as an address that is normally used on top of the Ethereum ledger, rather than another address that's not, or something that's already connected to your address or whatever. And it's not like, it's not helping the user in any way.
And they're trying to apply mitigations. They're not solving the problem. And again, due to platform limitations, it's probably an unsolvable problem on Ethereum.
What makes you confident?
Where it's like, sign the hash.
Why do you think that's why can you say with confidence that it's a platform limitation problem?
Because of all the time we spent coming to the solution, trying to solve this, that wound up at the transaction manifest, the Babylon transaction model. This was how we finally came to, like, finally, this will address the problem. I mean, obviously, this basically, is it absolutely impossible to solve? Well, I mean, code moves on. Maybe they change their transaction model or something like that. But that's a dramatic amount of work for an already running thing. It's just that when you're not designed to solve this problem, anything you're going to try to fit into your existing model is going to be a Band-Aid solution that, again, just tries to mitigate it a little bit, to help a little bit, rather than coming down to core first principles of what is the problem we're trying to solve, and one of them being that this user needs to understand what it is they're signing and what the consequences are, so that they're not surprised after they've added their signature to something and then it gets run by the network.
Right. That's really the thing that gets me. Like if you don't immediately believe us when we say that this is a platform limitation, like again, think about the nature of this particular hack where he signed a transaction that said my stuff can leave my account. Like this is not a
Right. So it wasn't like a bug in the smart contract or something like that.
Right. This is like the 99% case. This is what like everyone is doing all the time is like, I'm sending assets from one place to another and I want to make sure that that only happens when I want it to have happen. Like clearly if that isn't obvious, this is a platform problem because it should be trivial that like this shouldn't even be a question. It should just be like, of course, this thing is designed for sending stuff around. It should be obvious what you're looking at is actually what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And remember, Ethereum wasn't designed to send stuff around, right? This is something that was ERC20 was crafted like, hey, this is really useful to send stuff around here. And that wasn't the first principle of design. And all the, the EVM clones and the ones that have adopted the same methodology, they're also not trying to solve the same problem because it's not the first principle of design.
Yeah. This is why we can't do Solidity on Radix, because you have to throw that all away, because if you don't have a platform that starts with like sending things should be intuitive and part of the platform, then everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of that first principle design, like that it feels like such a disadvantage at first, because you're like, well, that means that you have to teach people a new way of interacting, and you have to teach people, and people have to learn a new coding method. And like on paper, you're like, yeah, that sounds like a bigger challenge than just taking what already exists. But it's literally like it's the difference between making people try and like get from one city to another by foot, and you invent a car and you're like, well, and everyone's like, well, now you have to learn to drive a car. And you're like, yeah, but if once you learn to drive the car, trust me, traveling's a lot easier because everything else is better.
On that example, though, that's assuming that everyone is already traveling by foot between different cities. We're talking an example where, like,
a few people.
No one does that because that's crazy to do. So, like, 5
You're converting them from the unicycle.
Like,
to the
I
car.
like walking. Yeah, exactly. Or like the penny farthing for like, you got a decent, like, we're in the innovator stage still.
Yep.
Like, it's not a big uplift to be like, probably 90% of people who will use Web3 have not used Web3 yet.
Yep.
So they're not relearning anything.
Yep.
It's just they're going to learn the right way first.
Right. Well, the way that most feels like everything that they have used before. Most feels like that they can do it confidently and it's not terrifying.
Right. Of course, what a thing I'm looking at is actually what's going to happen, and there'd be no surprises. Why would it be any other way?
I mean, I was actually talking with Adam earlier where he was like, did you download MetaMask? How long before you needed to use it did you download MetaMask? Because we were talking about some things to do with wallet adoption. And I was like, well, the first time I ever did a transaction on Ethereum, I had to use the first Ethereum wallet, and that required you to sync the entire network to your computer because you needed to be a node before it would let you do a transaction. So it took me 2 days to do my first transaction. So, we've come on a little bit of way, but I think we'll look back at things like MetaMask and blind signing and all this kind of stuff in the same amount of time, in 5 years' time, in 4 years' time, and go, oh my God, I can't believe
I'm going to point out to everyone else, as I pointed out to when you told me that story the first time, that is the equivalent of when you hear your grandparents say they had to walk like with no shoes 5 miles uphill both ways to school and back.
Yeah.
Of like the Web3 environment.
And I also just said it was 5 years ago, and that's a complete lie. It's 8 years ago. It's 8 years ago. Oh my God. Time. Oh God. Okay. All right. Next question before I get too depressed. How is Radix going to enable privacy on the network? This is a question that comes up quite a lot at the moment.
Right. Yeah, we just the privacy check mark is coming in the next release. We'll have that done. No, it's like this is privacy is a ridiculously complex topic. Like when you say enable privacy, I mean you have to get into what do you mean by privacy? How does that actually, like, where do you implement it? How does it interact with other systems? Like you get into topics of there are privacy like platform level privacy solutions that, I mean, change the nature of how the network works. I mean, there's a cost to it, basically. If you look at something like Monero or Zcash, it's sort of like, all right, privacy is kind of their starting principle. Like, there's a lot of complexity that goes into that basically prevents it from doing a lot of other things that more recent networks have been able to do. Like, there's a technical complexity there to that kind of solution, which has a real cost, whether you consider it like transaction throughput or cost or developer experience or whatever it is. Like, it definitely changes the nature of these things. And then you also get like the regulatory intersection with this stuff. It's like some forms of privacy are just going to be completely unacceptable for actual countries where people live, which means this is a barrier to mainstream adoption. So, like, I think all of us are really strong believers in privacy and the importance of personal privacy, but it's like, you really got to talk about what problem are you actually trying to solve and what's the appropriate way of solving it. And like, we have a lot of time on this. Like, these, it's the kind of thing where right now we don't see this as the big barrier to adoption. It's not sort of like, okay, I've got to have like obscured transactions to be able to do stuff. Like, it's really all about frictionlessness of interactions between applications and the user experience and these kinds of things. This is what's holding it back. And you don't really need to have concealed transactions for that. But then once, we'll get to that point, and this is where you start getting into, it may be that platform level solutions aren't even the right direction to go on it. It might be that application level solutions are more appropriate. Like, if you talk about sort of the wrench and coffee shop sort of problem, like, what if there is a third-party service that was basically providing kind of a buffer between you and the coffee shop? You don't necessarily have to be like, spending your $5 from your $1 million crypto account. Like, you could have something in the middle, a service in the middle that was sort of respecting regulations and doing the things, but actually giving you real personal privacy while still allowing you to transact. And with, like, one of the cool things that we think it's nice about the way Radix has done things is the transaction manifest and the way we do account control allows those kinds of things to happen. Like, you can have services that kind of build this sort of mechanism in here, and it doesn't require falling back to a centralized system. It doesn't require falling back to like, well, okay, I'm just going to put all my crypto on I'm not even going to mention the platform that we're all hating about, but like, some platform that's going to sort of spend on your behalf. Like, there are ways of doing this. So we've got lots of time to solve this problem. There are many solutions that merit many layers of the system. And I think we just kind of need to see where the use cases lead us and figure out where's the right solution to bring to Radix. But I'm not concerned that it's something that we won't be able to do.
Yeah.
Or some third party, if that's the right solution. Some third party's like, yes, I can build this easily on Radix. Perfect spot.
Right. In fact, to be honest, I think the majority of solutions are best solved by the community of people building stuff on the platform. Like, in some ways, you only want to solve the minimum set of problems with the platform that you absolutely have to. You want it to be simple and universal and secure, and then let the specific things get solved the next layer up. And so we put a lot of work into making that sort of stuff possible.
Which is actually what the Ethereum approach is as well. Like, I think that a lot of people don't realize that Ethereum isn't actively implementing privacy. They implemented the sufficient primitives to do with certain curves, certain signature validation, certain like maths functions, and certain data blobs. And that's like that's I'm oversimplifying here, but that it's not a lot. They didn't go, okay, we're now going to work out how to do the ZK proof maths and work out to do the most efficient circuits to be able to generate that. That's actually a bunch of different teams that have done really deep research into it, who are just using the simple primitives that have been enabled on the ledger. And like, adding those primitives is much easier than designing the other stuff, but the other stuff is where at the moment where a lot of research is going on. And as you say, Matt, like, there is a lot of questions around this, and I think that people often, when they talk about privacy, they think about well, what happens if I spend money and then I'm going to be tracked in some way because all of my transactions are on Ledger. What people forget is 95% of transactions that happen on top of Ledger are actually with smart contracts, not with individuals. You're not going into a coffee shop and buying stuff. You're actually interacting with smart contracts. And if you want to make smart contracts private, you've then just like done huge multiples on your complexity of what you've got to do. And a bunch of smart contract applications actually are not clear whether or not they're going to be possible because of the fact that the ledger, the smart contract needs to be able to have state representation that can be called to work out what the action you want to do against the smart contract is. And if it's entirely private, you can't do that. So there's like there's even more layers of complexity here. But I think that the starting point is Radix is designed to be able to update the primitives that it has available to it, and we will add this when it becomes the time to do it. But it's certainly not something that we need to do right now, and it's certainly not something pressing. Do you have anything to add, Russ?
Yeah, it's just that I'm continually mystified how people are like, you urgently must solve if I buy a coffee and I get hit in the head. It's like, why? Do you live in some place in the world I'm unaware of where all the coffee shops accept crypto payments and on like it's just such an odd thing to get so worked up over right now when it's like, let's get some adoption here. Let's get this to where the average, like, hey, it's an expected thing that stores will take crypto at point of sale. Like all point of sale, Square starts implementing this as just for Radix. Like, great. This is a great time to be thinking more seriously about how can we now address this problem because it's going to be a problem.
I think I
don't understand the urgency everyone feels like I must have the answer right now. Like, why? You have no coffee shop that takes.
I think the big thing is something that the peer says quite often, which is, are we making sure we're not painting ourselves into a corner on something? Right. And as Matt said,
does not preclude
the privacy solution is it could be solved at the application layer. Like there are solutions to this. It's not a case of, oh no, the plane's in flight and we need to change an engine.
You can actually, I can already think of a bunch of ways you could do using badges. That would be really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there definitely is. The last thing I'll say is like there was similar debates in the internet, right? Like the internet wasn't encrypted at the start, and everyone was like a lot of people were worried about it, and rightly so. There were issues with the internet not being fully encrypted, but it did become fully encrypted. It did, like HTTPS did become the standard. It went from HTTP, and people did implement that over time.
And the internet has gotten fairly well adopted.
Yes,
right. Yes. Worked out pretty well.
Big insights from Matt.
So yeah, I think it's coming. It's just not. It's not a pressing, urgent thing.
We should answer this. Will this be solved on Radix? Yes, of course. Yes.
Yes, of course.
If you want to get into when and how, these are things we'll discover over time.
Okay. Next question: how is Babylon Betanet going?
Ooh, I want to take this because I've been very excited. If you want to know how it's going, of course, just go to Discord and look at the developer response. But the thing I am very excited about is it is completely clear that several applications have moved from, hey, I'm playing around with script a little bit, to I'm trying to build something that I intend to go live when Babylon goes live or shortly thereafter. Because the nature of the questions have all gotten down to, from these projects, are around, I'm trying to achieve specifically this for this specific use case, which is obviously a real production use case. And either it's something where we say, yes, we apologize, this bit is not implemented yet, but it's coming. Or you can achieve it this other way. But the thing that I'm just delighting in, I'm not getting hello world questions. I'm getting these very deep questions that come down to, obviously I'm building a real thing here. Here's a complex use case. How can I achieve it with Betanet? And sometimes the answer is by doing this. And sometimes the answer is you can't yet, but it's coming. So I am really happy with how it's going because devs are engaging with it, and you can tell that they are starting their real builds. You can feel it in the questions that are being asked.
Don't take that. Anyone who's watching, don't take that as don't go into the Discord and ask hello world questions. Absolutely.
No, do that too. We do that. We still have that. In fact, the volume of hello world questions in the beginners channel has also gone up quite a bit. Like people are definitely coming in new as well, but that's a good thing if we're getting good top of funnel, new devs coming in, which is great. Yeah. But I love that we also have the people who are clearly really building stuff, and we have. I don't think this has been announced anywhere, but maybe a little bit in Discord. We have a Betanet V2, which is going to be coming out, and actually, Matt, do you want to just? Describe a little bit of what's coming out on this, so that I'll come in.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about kind of like the top, like the top level, and you can talk about some of the network aspects of it better than me. But there are a few things that are going to be coming at the same time. It's Betanet's all about developers. This has been the whole thing. So we're really trying to be focused on, like, as people are doing the things that Russ just said, it's like, hey, we're doing production development. We want to understand how these things work. Like, we're trying to fill those gaps as quickly as kind of really focused on enabling those people. So the beta 2 release is going to be about kind of like filling some of those gaps that we know are out there so people can take the next steps on their development roadmap. So this is going to come with a new release of the developer preview wallet. That will include an Android release of the developer preview wallet, which we gather that there are 1 or 2 people that want that. I guess Android has a few users out there.
A couple. I think it's like just 1, actually. It's not really.
It's not quite as adopted as the internet, but close.
But we want to get that happy. That guy needs to be happy. He deserves it. Yeah, we've been working on both of them in parallel, but like the development roadmaps have kind of synced up a little bit better now. So Android is basically caught up to iOS. We're going to be releasing the Android wallet as well as a new version of the iOS wallet. Kind of the neat thing about that one is those wallets are going to enable the first bits of the persona-based login system, which has been missing to this point. So far it's been sort of like, okay, you can build a front end, you can connect accounts to it, kind of MetaMask style. But we haven't gotten to some of the unique stuff. Now you're going to be able to actually users will be able to create a persona, select it, log in with that persona to a dApp website, which means if you're a dApp developer, you can start building some of that logic. Does not have all the proof parts of it yet. So if you're building like a backend system and you want to do a cryptographic challenge against that login, that's going to come a little later. But in terms of front-end development, you'll be able to build it with the tools that sort of like has a good user flow to it, where the user comes, logs into your website, hands some information across to your website. You can work with that, and then they can disconnect if they want to. So we kind of got the full user flow. Personal data is going to be coming a little bit later. We don't have that in yet, but you can kind of imagine how that would work. It's just another request you can make to the wallet. Along with that is going to be an update to the front end development tools as well that kind of mates up to the wallet. So it's been cool seeing on Discord people have been playing around with. We started with this Radix Connect button, which has actually become quite a bit more than a button. It's ending up being a really important piece of the development puzzle. It's kind of like the anchor on the other side, where on your website, there's this thing that represents the user and their wallet in your website and makes that connection to the wallet really nice and seamless. It's sort of like your local representative of the wallet on your website. And so people have been using that and they've been enjoying it. We're actually fleshing this out. It's going to become something called the Radix Developer Toolkit, which will include the wallet SDK. It'll be nicely integrated with the button, and it'll have some kind of cool features for keeping track of current state. So you can rely on it a little bit more, and it relieves your burden as a developer, but also implements some of these new nice features with logins and whatnot. So very excited to get that stuff out there. Also a little bit more about like metadata standards, about setting up your dApp. They're going to be talking about some kind of neat stuff like that we're probably going to be pushing out. I don't know, Russ, like if you want to go do the next level down.
Well, one big one is it's going to have our first set of community node runners to be trying out the Babylon node and validating and all that. So that's our first test cohort. Will go live, maybe not on the exact day Betanet 2 releases, but we're going to be in contact with all of them to get that set up, which will... that's mostly interesting for that population to get used to running the node, and also for us that we're checking how staking and all that kind of stuff works under the new model. And Scripto, there's kind of some fit and finish stuff. There's little minor syntactical changes and that kind of stuff. Nothing that is, Scripto is really, really close to feature complete at this point. It's more of just changing slightly the way things are done, and that's all going to be documented out. But I expect that anybody who's building right now will have, no more than a few minutes to switch over to the Betanet V2 version of Scripto, which I expect is going to be 0.8, unless I've forgotten that we've already done that. My head's going for this kind of thing right now. I think that's pretty much it. It's developer oriented, but things are moving along, and we're really excited that people are building real stuff, and we're seeing all the signs of it.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to see what people are doing, with their persona login stuff. That'll be. I'm so excited for personas and how you can create, personalized web experiences in Web3 that doesn't require you essentially to have a back end, or not really that much of a back end, and what that will do for users feeling like they've got a nice personalized seamless experience, but still feel like they're in complete control of their sort of privacy and all that kind of stuff. I love it. It's so
it's been cool. There's been, it seems like, the Twitter sphere has recently been talking a lot about this kind of stuff, about like realizing, identity is a real thing and data sharing is a real thing and everything. Yeah. This is something we're gonna have to come back and talk to pretty soon. We've got some neat stuff like that coming, and that probably deserves its own roundtable at some point. It's a really cool topic.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving on to the next question, which is how's the first grants program going, Adam?
So that's something that's being run by our dev ecosystem team, and as you may have seen on the announcement, the first 6 projects are in cohort 1. So as with many things we do at RDX and with Radix, is we take a very intentful purpose to anything that we roll out. So this is the pilot program of grants. It leans heavily on Piers' experience from Y Combinator and what we can really do to help make this fledgling ecosystem or economy that's being built on a public ledger really thrive. The quality of applications was staggeringly good, and the sheer volume of them. So there was a couple of days where Piers and I and May from the dev ecosystem team literally spend full days of doing like 15-minute interviews with people.
Back to back.
And they were all fantastic. So firstly, everyone who applied, thank you so much. That was one of that I couldn't have asked for a better start to the year than seeing those amazing projects there. Yeah.
So motivating.
And also the breadth of things people are building as well. That was the other really cool thing. So first 6 projects, we were planning to do 5, but then ended up doing 6 because we were just like, we wanted to do even more. But that's all kicking off, depending on when this roundtable goes out. It starts early Feb. So that'll be all kicking off, then running for 12 weeks. So it's a very intensive program for everyone who is on it. And that involves like masterclasses, it involves group sessions, and really, again, following that model of Y Combinator of how can you create this environment for success. And all of that culminates in RadFest at Consensus. So that's where we'll be highlighting the projects. They'll have a chance to present what they're showing. And I'm really excited about what's going to be coming out of this. Piers, obviously, you've been involved in this as well quite heavily. So like, what do you think?
I think that, so the interesting thing was sort of 3 of the projects were DEXs, but they're all taking a very different approach to decentralized exchanges, and they're all at different stages. Sort of like Caviar Swap and Aussie Swap is obviously going to be well known to everyone in the ecosystem, and they're both amazing projects with amazing founders. AlphaDex is one that hasn't launched, but is sort of trying to do something sort of even more ambitious in the sort of world of decentralized exchanges, which is order book dexes. Really, the only successful order book dexes that we've seen so far have been things like Serum on Solana, and DYDX as well as also an order book dex. So it's sort of like there've been some very successful ones, and then there's been lots and lots of not very successful ones. But we're really interested to see what the founder's going to be able to do with Scripto and the possibilities that are sort of opened up by the user experience there, and things like the transaction manifest, which makes a bunch of stuff much more flexible in how you build this kind of stuff. We got Photon, which is like a marketplace for NFTs, but it has a much sort of broader scope that it's aiming for as well. Hermes protocol, which is essentially a way of creating notifications around smart contract and Web3 events. So, if you want to have push notifications for things like when a governance vote is happening, or when a certain NFT has gone on sale, or whatever, like it's adding the notification layer to trustless applications, which I think is sort of really does fit into an area that is really going to need a lot of improvement if we're going to go from the degen crowd who wake up and check everything every day because that's all they do every day, to sort of the sort of more day-to-day crowd who really do want to have a push notification when they need to go and look at their stuff. And then XRD domains, which is the first domain level service for Radix that I've seen go live, that is focusing on sort of you can think of it as like ENS, but for Radix, so you can get your xrd.xrd domain, so you can be peers.xrd or whatever, and anyone who's sort of dived into the ENS, the Ethereum name service ecosystem, knows how like sort of critical and important that is becoming to help make addresses and things like that human readable. So that's really exciting as well. So super pumped to be helping all of these guys sort of like improve, iterate, and experiment for the next 3 months. Okay, so going back to Radix code now, what is the plan for pen testing and code audits for Babylon?
Which has been coming up a lot in Telegram, at least. I've seen this a few times. And let's start with what are we talking about? Because not everybody is in the software world. So pen testing is penetration testing. And this is where basically you pay some party to come in and test your stuff in a way of, can you break it? Can you access something that you ought not to be able to access? And this is something we definitely are intending to do. We are in conversations with a firm that our head of security has experience with and likes very, very much. And this is something we definitely want to do. And there's in pen testing, there's a couple ways you can go after this. One is to do here's some endpoints, I tell you nothing. Try to figure out if you can break it like that. And then the second one is to do more of an informed one, where you go to them and say, not only are here some endpoints, here are the things I categorically think I might be, are going to be ripe for attack. And this is the ways that I think you might be able to subvert the system or something like that. And we intend to do both of those things for sure. So that's penetration testing or pen testing. The other one is code audits. Code audits is where you have again, some firm comes in and they're going to read your code and run some tools against it and stuff like that and try to tell you, here's where you have problems. This is an area that is, from my perspective, very commonly misunderstood. At least I see it in the crypto space, where they kind of go, oh, did you have a code audit? Okay, yes, then we know everything's good. Like, hang on, guys. This is code audits, particularly when it comes to novel software that is unique and complicated. You have to be very careful about what you actually expect to get out of it. Because when you have unique and complicated software, the people who are most expert in its use are the ones who have implemented it the first time. And to expect that some stranger can come in and within the space of, 2 weeks, just have this Olympian genius to just, I fully understand everything and I can see that you have a logic problem here, right? I mean, it's unrealistic to think that's what makes you safe, right? If you're thinking that, you're not thinking clearly about this is the outcome that you're going to get from a code audit.
It always strikes me as like handing someone the full blueprints to a car and expecting them to tell you like, yeah, you're going to be able to go 30,000 miles between oil changes, or you expect your transmission's going to fail after 80,000 miles. But like
Right. It's not going to happen.
It's much more about experience. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Yeah, it's the wrong level.
They work much better in well-established spaces where, you have a thing which is very similar to these other 100 things I've seen, and I know the pitfalls that befall them, and so forth. So then it's less of you need this miraculous insight into code you've never seen before, because you say, oh, this is a lot like code I've seen many hundreds of times before, and I know what to look for. So we are in conversations with a couple of audit firms. And there are areas that we're interested in having a targeted look at, explaining the model and the code. And that is something we're pursuing. But the bigger way that we establish confidence that things work is this staged rollout approach. It's the fact that for consensus, we got everything. We're like, hey, consensus works. Let's release Olympia. Let's check that without getting all the complexity of programmability and smart contracts and all that. And let's see empirically and in the wild that we're seeing that it works and seeing what things develop. Scripto, we release way ahead of time with Alexandria. Like you have this preview release. First it runs locally, then it runs on a network with AlphaNet, then we have BetaNet. So all these things, you learn a lot more about actually putting them into practice and having the people who wrote the software thinking very deeply about these interactions. So yes, we are pursuing a code audit. This is one of these things, like I see it so frequently that I want to kind of align people's views towards, if you're looking at, Joe Bob project announces brand new L1, is it safe? Have they had a code audit? Yes, must be safe. Don't think that way. Code audits are one tool in the toolkit that lets you get to having more confidence that you've implemented well. But it's important not to think of it as, well, if you don't have a code audit, obviously it's broken. And if you do have a code audit, obviously everything works, because it's just not the case.
So what is it?
I will get off my soapbox now on that.
No, but it's an interesting point. So what is it that we are doing to add confidence to the functionality of the network and the network functions correctly?
I mean, the staged rollout is that's the critical thing, and all the observations of where are things going wrong and the areas. Some of the things that go wrong, we knew, like we just haven't gotten to that part of the stack yet. And so it's expected that you can, for example, submit too large a payload and crash it. It's like, yeah, we just haven't implemented that code yet. But it's also just about seeing in practice how things work, and then revisiting all your designs and going, okay, is it behaving as we expect? For example, things that we said, look, this is solid, it's not going to break here. Are we at least empirically validated at this point that we have seen transactions that would stress this part of the system and it's not breaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other things from the code audit perspective.
If the question is, if the question is like, for example, is the Radix engine solid? Like, is this well designed? Like, I would trade any amount of money spent on code audits for this for a year of developers actually working with Scripto and using code with Radix engine.
Yeah.
Like,
of course,
it's like the SpaceX approach. It's like, you build hardware, you launch rockets, you learn quickly. It's like, even if you're Boeing and you've got 3 decades and you get trillions of dollars dumped into you, your first launch is probably still going to fail. Like, it's just like it's the code auditor approach. Like, it's better to just build, learn, iterate, move fast, have smart people that know how this stuff works.
Right.
And things that are concerned to safety.
Doing real things.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But like things concerned with, could you have a double spend, or things like could someone else withdraw tokens from an account which they should not be able to withdraw? These are the kind of things that not only are we insanely confident of, but we will get the outside opinion with like detailed explanation of, this is exactly how the state model works and all this, and here's the ways into it. We'll tell you that, you come have a look, and do you agree that there's no possible safety violation here? These are the things that you can possibly, they think of some edge case you didn't. I'd be quite surprised, but we are going to go through the exercise of doing it. Things like, here is Babylon node code base, Radix engine code base. Okay, you guys got 2 months, go. That's nonsense if you expect you're going to get useful output out of that. What you will get, and anybody who's been a dev who's gone through this is going to be smiling because they'll be nodding with me right now. They will run the same static analysis tools that your continuous integration process runs and go, here's a report of things to fix in your system, which is like, you have a declared variable which didn't get used here and stuff like that. Or you have an unsafe unwrap in a place where we know we're going to panic anyway for that. But that's not good code principle. So there's a fix for you, buddy. Give me my check, right? Static analysis is something that is not helpful to you from a code audit perspective, because if you're a good developer, a good shop, you're doing that already anyway.
Cool. So in summary, we've been testing a lot, and the stage rollout has been testing a lot, and we continue to grow in confidence, but it will grow in confidence in time that this is solid.
It's just these are tools in the toolbox that help you gain confidence.
And I can vouch for the fact that we do a lot of testing. It was in the Radix DNA right from the start. In fact, it was the thing that Dan, even back in the day, spent the majority of his time on. And testing is, when you're building something of this critical nature, it just becomes such an important part in terms of code coverage and all this kind of stuff. So. Last question. What has the response to RadFi been like 2 months on? Adam, do you want to start with that?
Fantastic is the short answer. In terms of response, both publicly, in private channels, has just been amazing. And like, as we started this roundtable off with, like with the example of the stolen NFTs, for example, without RadFi, the community wouldn't have had content that they were going to share to show the transaction manifest and be able to concisely explain why that was so powerful.
Right.
And so already we're not just seeing the people engage with it, they understood it and are empowered by it to spread the vision. Secondly, it's like in private channels, like the number of people who have messaged me, who are partners we engage with, people in my network and across the network of everyone else in the company being like, this is great. And as an intro tool as well, first time we interact with new potential partners or anyone who's interested in Radix is like, go and watch RadFi. And that gets people across the line. It's incredibly powerful evergreen content. And then just sheerly from a metrics perspective, I mean, personally, I'm really pleased with the fact and proud of the fact that within, well, it was under a month, we matched the number of views on the RadFi video as Solana's keynote in the summer, for example. Anecdotally, and this is obviously anecdotal evidence, but like the number of people mentioning Radix, the number of people in private groups, in channels, at conferences being like, oh, I've heard of Radix, I've seen this thing. Oh, you're doing that, like something cool with the wallet, right? And they may not be fully there yet, but it's been a big uptick in what's happening and how well I believe people who are interested in Radix can accessibly understand the value proposition of the platform.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, I really like the understanding aspect of it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say what we found at Radix historically is the story's complicated, right? If someone goes, give it to me on a fortune cookie, oh, it's X TPS, like it's hard to do that because we're doing so much. Well, one, RadFi just helped with that. You see all the stuff we got going on here? Like this is a big scope thing. I can't just boil it down to one sentence. But what I love about it is we have found that once people at least go to, I will go read something about Radix, we tend to hook them. Like if I can get more than 5 minutes of attention, they tend to start going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And the more they click, the more they get like, oh my God, this is changing everything. This is the game changer. RadFi provides all these ways now, like the bits on the wallet demo or descriptions of, things we're doing to avoid blind signing and hacks and that sort of thing. There are all these ways to someone just see a little bit of that clip and go, wow, that's interesting. I will learn more because now it's gotcha. Second, I've hooked you a little bit that you're going to start reading some blogs and stuff like that. I know I've got you because the more you look into this stuff, the more you go like, wow, you guys have the right approach here. This is dramatically different than everyone else. So I love it as a bit of, it's like this great roping content because people come and say, hey, I just saw this little bit. It's almost always the bit on the wallet, right? That's the easiest thing to share to someone. Like, check out this preview where you're signing the thing. This is really cool. Good. I got you with that. Now you come in and start reading, go, wow, the stuff with crypto is really great. The transaction manifest is cool. Oh, and the linear scaling, atomic composability. I never heard that before. Like all that kind of stuff. It's great because we provided all these ways to just like get you to come in and read a little more, and then you're hooked on Radix, as you should be, as all right-thinking people should.
That's the thing I really like though is like on your question, Piers, like what's it like 2 months on? I still feel like it's the early game for like the value of RadFi.
Yeah.
Like the response we've seen so far and the fact that it's still like there are still people messaging me being like, oh yeah, I watched RadFi, or we see people in the community linking RadFi. I think that it's still happening 2 months on. I think it will still be happening 6 months on. And having a cornerstone piece of content, not only for us to utilize and help explain, but for the Radix community to have and build off of and share is really where we'll see a lot of value from this. So please ask me again in 4 more months how I think RadFi went.
I think this is not an automatic thing. I mean, you can talk about sort of like number of viewers of the YouTube clips and all the kind of your typical metrics and everything, but like it feels like especially in the world today and especially in crypto, most of this content sort of like it's a flash in the pan. It's sort of like there was some big moment, people paid attention to it 30 seconds, and then it's on to the next thing. And this has been the really gratifying thing from my perspective is that people are really engaging with RadFi. It isn't just sort of like, oh yeah, that was a cool presentation. It was like, that was exciting. And they just stop. It's like, they aren't just saying those sorts of things. They're saying, oh, that part of it, they latch on to one part of it that really grabbed them. It's like, oh, that part of the demo. It's like, I never thought that should be, I never realized how important that was, or that really made sense to me. There's this thing I've never understood about crypto and that really solves it. And the fact that came out of like a pretty it was a pretty power demo of everything we're doing. When there's a lot going on, it was sort of like, it wasn't breaking it down into elaborate detail. It was just kind of like the rapid tour through everything. And the fact that it clicked with people really quickly and did draw that attention where they said, not only is this interesting, it is meaningful to me in some way. And that makes me want to understand more about what you're doing and get involved in what you're doing. Like we've even seen, I really like seeing when some of the developers in the community, and I think even some new developers coming into the community, like saw their application in some aspect of RadFi.
Yeah.
They looked at it and they were like, oh yeah, if it's possible to do, you're showing this like compliance badge that is in the transaction. If you can do that, then it must be possible also to do this other cool thing that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
So people are like finding their piece of this thing that they can help build, which is really cool to see. Like as people who have been working for a long time on building tools to enable other people, seeing people pick up pieces of it and say like, yeah, this is something I really want to make use of. This is like, it feels really good.
As content, it's really good kindling for innovation.
Kindling for innovation.
I like it.
Put that on a bumper sticker, Adam.
Yep.
That's a fridge magnet. So I've had some great conversations since RadFi with partners and people who are looking at building on Radix, sort of like both big people and small people. And it creates that click moment where how all of the pieces of Radix fit together and all of the engineering decisions that we've made sort of are brought together in this way that makes it you understand all of the pieces together. And like that has been so powerful for people to understand then how what they want to build fits into it in a way that now it's easy to see the path. You can stand in front of someone and talk to them all day, but until you can demonstrate things visually about what that actually means and what the impact of the user is going to be and what the impact of the developer is going to be, it's night and day. And I had a amazing conversation with these guys who are building their first Web3 crypto app. And they had watched, they were a friend of one of the developers in Radix, which is how I ended up talking with them. And they come from a very experienced business background where they've built like a bunch of businesses and exited them. And I was going to have this conversation because Josh was like, they're asking all of these questions. I think you're probably better placed to answer them than me. So like, can you jump on this call? And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. But before I was like, make sure you watch RadFi and then we'll have the conversation. On the call, they were like, we don't have any questions anymore. Like you've literally solved everything for what we wanted to do. This is amazing. And like they spent the entire call telling me how amazing RadFi was and all of the revelations they'd had during it. And like I was just like, this is brilliant. So yeah. There's this great Stephen Fry quote where he says like, sometimes when you're in the middle of a city, you can't see how tall the buildings are. It's only when you've driven out of the city and you've looked through the rear window do you get a sense of the scale of some buildings versus the other. And I think that this is one of these things that it will look bigger in hindsight than it was when we did it, because it for us it was such a milestone around setting out what we think the proper vision for the industry is, not just for our technology as well.
Well said.
I think we can leave it there.
Poetic quote to end on about driving away from a beautiful city.
Yeah. I mean, he was actually talking about Oscar Wilde.
Wait, so don't jinx it. Don't hang on. That's it. All right. Thanks all. It's been a good night.
So yeah. But thank you very much for listening, everyone. Russ, Matt, Adam, thank you as always. And please do keep asking questions in the community. Please do make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and looking forward to
smash that like button.
Smash that like button, exactly. Now Matt's become a YouTube influencer. He's got.
That was the best thing out of RadFi so far. Is someone has clipped a moment of Radmat mid-speech in RadFi and using a YouTube thumbnail. That is my highlight so far.
Put that on my tombstone.
I would love that if your tombstone was just the rad mat like Superman. That would be
that was it.
All right, thank you very much everyone, and thank you all for listening.